Hello everyone, I'm Mikhail. I'm the curator of the Unreal 5 courses of the arhi.teach school. In this video I would like to talk about Rizom program and the main methods of working in it. I'll take the bar chair model as an example. We are doing the architectural visualization, so I need the unwraps only for the light maps. I'll pick a model element, for example this pillow. Launch the Rizom program using the Rizom UV bridge. Then select the channel for the unwrap. I'll also choose make a new unwrap or edit the old one. After the launch of the program, we'll see quite a confusing interface, but in fact everything is pretty logical and simple here. The first thing that you notice are two large windows. The left one is the models window. Here we can see our model. The right window is the unwrap window. Here we've got the canvas of the unwrap. The model's unwrap will be here. While the model isn't unwrapped, it is depicted as a 3D object in the background. Now a few words about the navigation in the program. Firstly, we can select our navigation, so everyone can set it the way they need. You can do it in the Edit menu, Keyboard, Mouse, Customizer. Here we can choose the preset of the program that we work with. This will be the most comfortable option for us. Also, you may set everything manually. I use the 3D Max preset. The navigation works in the following order. Scaling using the mouse wheel. We can move the model by pressing the mouse wheel. In order to turn the model, we use the Alt key. You can also use the hotkeys for navigation. The F key lets you focus on the chosen segment. The A key lets you focus on the whole model. Let's talk about the tools on our panels. On the left side of the screen there is an Edit panel. Tool is Select. It is used to select the model and its elements. The next tool is Transform. This tool allows to make transporting, scaling and turning operations with the elements of the unwrap. I'll show you how it works. As a start, warp the model. Now using this tool we can scale, turn and move these elements. This tool also has a hotkey. It's the F5 key. The Tab key is also really easy to use. The Tab key does a tool call without the need to switch to it. When we release the Tab key, the Transform tool actions disappear. We need to use Shift with this tool in order to scale the unwrap on the chosen axis. Next we've got the tools for editing the unwrap's grid. The first one is the Drag tool. It allows to make a smooth grid's displacement. It has some setting parameters. The radius size of this tool is tied to the size of the UV port window. That's why, while scaling the UV port window, we can choose if we need a smaller or a bigger brush. The Spread tool stretches the unwrap. The Pinch tool squeezes it. Then we've got the Unwrap and Brush tool. It is used in order to smoothly unwrap the model. The next tool is the Optimization brush that optimizes the model's grid in places we need it. I didn't acknowledge how we can use 3 remaining tools in this field of activity. Then we've got Peaks, Edges, Polygons and Model Elements tools. These tools are applied by pressing the hotkeys F1, F2, F3, F4. These 3 tools are used the most: Edges, Polygons and Elements. Then we've got the highlighting tools, such as Box Selection, freeform selection or circle selection. I don't use the resting two symmetry elements. Now let's talk about the button at the top corner of the screen. The first button opens the window on the full screen. In this mode, another button appears. It allows us to switch between the model window and the unwrap window. Then we've got three buttons that regulate the option of the model display. The first one is the display of the surface, the second one is the display of the grid, and the third one combines them, the surface of the model and the grid. Then there are buttons that put the texture on the model's surface. It allows us to control the unwrap better. Then there are two buttons that allow to focus on the chosen segment. The first button is identical to the F hotkey, and the second button returns the focus on the whole object. The next button turns on the light source, making the model more volumetric. Then there is a button that allows you to see the cutting line through the model. For example, I create a cutting line. Now I see it from the backside. If I turn it off, then I can't see the line. Sometimes it's helpful. The next button allows you to see the borders of the unwraps. I don't usually use X, Y and Z buttons. By default, it's the Y button. They allow you to change the orientation in the model in space. The next buttons, both 3ds and flats, they allow you to display the model segments that are either unwrapped or not. The both button displays both types of the segments. The 3ds button displays the segments that are not unwrapped, and the flat button displays the unwrapped ones. Let's return the model to its original state. This can be done by pressing the Shift+R hotkeys. We can see that the model disappeared. That's because the flat mode that displays the unwrapped segments is activated. Let's switch to 3ds mode. Now we can see a model that wasn't unwrapped. When we'll start choosing and unwrapping the segments, they'll disappear. So we would only be able to work with the segments that weren't unwrapped. Then we've got buttons that allow us to isolate, hide and show the chosen element of a model. They also have hotkeys I, H and Y. There's also an automatic option. It means that the program, using its algorithms, will try to understand what we need at the present moment, but this doesn't always work correctly. The buttons at the unwrap window are identical to those at the model window. There are some unique buttons. The first button enables the rotation, but it isn't usually used. The second button enables the texture display. It's mostly used when we try to adjust the unwrap of the texture. At the bottom part of the screen we've got transform tools, but they aren't usually used. The only thing that's worth using is the options to turn the object by different angles. I don't use the next tool panel as well. On the right part of the screen there are different tools for working with the unwraps. I'll talk about them later. On the bottom part we can see the first one is the indicator of how the program works when some action is taking place. For example, the program packs the unwraps elements. Sometimes it requires quite a long time. So here we can stop this action by pressing the stop button. Then we've got this scale. It can display different conditions of a model. But more often the stretch value is used. It shows at what extent the grid is stretched. For example, let's take some model's element and stretch it using the tool. We can see that the color is changing. It happens because the grid's structure is being destroyed. In some places it becomes more stretched. And the red color says that the grid becomes more dense. For the preparation of the unwraps of the light maps, you should avoid such effects. This tool is an indicator that we can orient on. I have to talk about the Optimize tool. This tool allows you to optimize the unwraps grid in the way that would minimize the stretching or compression. Now we can see that the unwrap returned to its normal state. Now let's talk about the tools that are locked at the top window of the program. The first tool is Cut, that allows you to cut model on parts. Let's switch to the Edges mode. I choose the edges that are locked on the same line by pressing the mouse button twice. Then I press the Cut tool. The hotkey is C. We've made a cut. Now there are two elements. You can also sew them together again. I again choose the edge on which I want to sew them together and press the Weld button. Now these two elements were sewn into one. We also have a number of options for the Weld tool. The first one is Transform Islands. That allows us to move the unwarped spots. There are also options such as Live U or Live O. It means that the sewing tools is used, the Unfold or Optimize are applied. Now let's talk about the tools of the Unwarp panel. The first tool is Unfold. It unfolds the model. Let's return the model to its initial state by pressing Shift and R. Here we can see the seams. In order to get rid of them, we need to highlight everything and press Weld. Then press Shift and R. Everything's back to normal. Let's make some seams manually. Select the edges and press Cut. Do the same with the bottom part. Select the edges and press Cut. Now using the Unfold, the hotkey is U. We make an unwarp. The top and bottom parts are unwarped perfectly. And the sides are shaped like a circle. Let's make some more cuts, so unwarp will be better. Then press the U Unfold button. Also, when you point the cursor on an element, the Unfold or Optimize works only for this element. If the cursor is pointed at the blank space, then the orders will work with all elements, or only with the chosen ones. The next button is Optimize. It allows you to optimize the unwarped grid in that way, so it would have as few stretches or compressions as possible. To show how this function works, we will distort the grid a bit. Now let's press Optimize. Now we can see that the grid has aligned. You can press a number of times. Or point at an element and press a few times. The Optimize tool has several functions. First one is Mix. That allows you to choose the power of the tool. The next function allows you to choose the nature of the Optimize tool action. This tool either gets the perfect angle between the edges or gets the best length of the edges. You can set the balance to achieve the best possible result. There is also one more button. It's either auto or manual. In the first counter, we can set how many times the optimized will be applied after the unwarp. The second counter sets the number of how many times the optimized will be applied. The higher the number is, the higher is the quality of the optimization, but this will take more time. I don't use the next set of buttons, they won't help in my work. Next, there is a layout panel. This panel consists of the buttons that help with the unwarp picking. The first button is Pack. It packs either all the islands or only the chosen ones. The next Pack button also packs the islands, but conserves their scale and orientation. For example, if an island is scaled or rotated, we press this button and the scale and position don't change. The first Pack button will change the scale to the initial and will change the position. The next buttons put the islands in the unwarp canvas. For example, we've packed them, moved or scaled them. And now we need them to fill the canvas as much as possible. The second button increases their size without concerning the proportions. The islands can be deformed though. The next two buttons let us scale the islands according to their areas. For example, we've got some stretched islands. Now, in order to return the balance of the island's areas, we will use these buttons. The program will scale the islands according to the size of the first one and second one. The first button scales all the islands. The second button scales only the chosen ones. Now let's talk about these three counters: margin, spacing, map resolution. The first counter shows the intent from the edge of the canvas in pixels. Now it's 4, but if we set more, for example 12, we will see that the frame moved. Now when we pack the unwrap, the islands will be inside this frame. It's the free space from the edge. 4 will be enough. The next parameter is the distance from the islands. When you create the unwraps, it's important to keep the necessary distance between the islands. 4 pixels is enough. But if the texture's resolution will be less than 1024, for example 512, then the distance between the islands will be only 2 pixels. This may not be enough. That's why when you create an unwrap, you should keep in mind the size of the texture that you'll use and make some reserve. For example, for 512 we will use 4 pixels. Let's pack the unwrap. As we can see, the distance has increased. Now, even if it turns out that we will use a smaller map, for example 256, then our distance of 2 pixels might be okay for us. But if we want to use a texture with a larger resolution, for example 1024, then for this size the distance between these islands will be 8. So we'll have a large reserve. I don't usually use the 2 resting buttons, they just stay as they are. The next panel is called Packing Properties. Here we can see the different settings for the packing of the unwraps. The first setting is the packing quality. The higher is the volume, the higher is the quality of the unwraps packing. But it takes a lot more time. Then we've got mutations parameter. That shows us the number of algorithms needed for achieving the best result. I don't usually use groups, layout and transform buttons. In the next block there is initial scale. You can use keep button in case if you don't want the pack to scale the islands. Then we can set the position of the islands in space. I don't usually touch anything here as well. The next tool panel, Orientation Optimization, allows you to set the angle of the island's rotation when they are being packed. You can either turn it off. Then our island will stay vertical according to these parameters, horizontal or vertical. Or set the angle that the program will turn them when they are being packed. You can use 45 or 90. The more parameters are set for the algorithm, the longer it takes to pack the islands. And if there are too many of them, it can take quite a lot of time. The next tool panel is not used in my kind of work. Let's return the unwrap to its initial state. Press Ctrl and A, and then weld. Now press Shift and R. So we'll return to the condition that we were in at the beginning. Now let's talk about the panel that allows us to create different options of the unwraps. Automatic unwraps. They are located in the Auto Seams segment. The first option of the automatic unwrap is hierarchical palette. In this mode of automatic unwrap, it's really comfortable to unwrap organic objects such as plants or characters. Here we can choose different options: leaf, branches or trunk. Let's see how it works on our model. By the way, in order for this button to function, the auto arrow, it's necessary to activate the primitive mode edge. Then press auto select edge and the program will suggest where we should make a cut. Now it's difficult to see it, but it's located in this corner. If we turn it according to the suggested option, then we'll have this unwrap. This indicates that this type of an unwrap doesn't really suit our pillow. The first button shows the seam that the program suggests. The second button turns it according to the suggested seam. The third button packs it. Let's look at other unwrap options. The next is the mosaic unwrap. Here we can set the number of elements that our object will be divided into. Press auto, and now we can see that our object was divided into several elements by the program itself. Let's see how it will rotate. That's how the program made an unwrap in this mode. For each model we need to set the most suitable algorithm and its parameters. The next unwrap option is the creation of the seams according to the preset angle. Let's see how it looks. The next unwrap option is the unwrap by projections. By changing the parameters, we can find the best option for our model. When we find a suitable option, we need to press C to make cuts, and then press the U key to make an unwrap. After that, we need to press the P key to pack it. Automatic unwrap can't always give us the result we want. Then we've got an option of making an automatic unwrap that will suit cylindrical objects. Let's make some cuts manually. F2. Edit the edges. We've chosen the edge by clicking twice. Then we've chosen the second edge. Then made cuts. Then we press U and P. So we've got three elements, one of which is a circle element. Let's try to make it automatically. Let's select this mode. Open the optional parameters. Here we can choose different settings if the unwrap doesn't satisfy us for some reason. Auto mode, press and fold. The program has determined that for this element one cut is enough to turn it into a straight line. The first section is select. There is a number of tools for controlling the choice of polygons or edges. Then there is an align, straighten, flip, fit, stack panel. Here we can edit the grid of the islands. The first four buttons function in the mode of choosing the edges. Let's choose the edge, press make vertical. Sometimes it can be useful, but I don't use it often. The next buttons function in the mode of choosing the polygons or elements. When we choose an element, we can align its structure with these buttons. It means that its polygons have been aligned. You can do the same with the other one. If we have objects with peaks consisting of more than 4 edges, then these options won't function correctly for them. So the grid becomes crooked. In order to return everything back, we need to press Unwrap button. I don't use the next set of buttons fit to grid. Next, there is set of buttons that is called flip. Sometimes I use them in cases when the unwrap turns upside down. For example, there are models with a black unwrap like this one. You can't just leave it like this. There will be problems in working with a model with such an unwrap. So, in order to get rid of it, I use these buttons that will turn it. I don't use them for other purposes. There are also buttons that allow us to align the island on any of the axes. I don't use the next buttons that regulate the aligning or distance. I also want to talk about functions of edge, polygon and island tools. These additional functions are located in this part of the screen. Let's start with the edge. Using these settings, we can do automatic selection of edges that suits the necessary parameters. Let's return the model to its initial state. Ctrl A, W and Ctrl R. Then turn on the additional parameters. Parameter edge limit regulates how the automatic edge selection functions. If we decrease this value down to 37 degrees, then we'll see that the selection ended at the place where the corner between the edges was more than 37 degrees. The next parameter, edge count limit, sets the number of the edges that will be selected in the automatic mode. Let's set it to 5. Then choose the edges. And we will see that 5 edges on the one side were selected as well as 5 edges on the other side. The algorithm of the automatic edge selection searches for the edges that are located on the same line. If there is a peak with more or less than 4 edges, the algorithm stops. There is also a geometric button. It turns on the algorithm of the automatic size analysis and edge selection. As we can see, the program has chosen edges in an interesting way. Let's see how it looks on the unwrap. Press Cut C, press Unwrap U key. So the program did quite well. In some cases it might be helpful. There is also a stop button that allows us to restrict the algorithm of automatic edge selection with those edges that have already been selected. Let's switch to the polygon tool. The polygon tool has several options of polygon selection. Activate them. We can see that the program suggests selecting the whole section. Using additional settings, we can select the size of this segment. Let's switch to the island tool. It has a number of functions that allow us to select islands according to the set parameters. For example, by the number of polygons. Either select or type the necessary number of polygons and press select. The islands with less than 88 polygons were selected. It can also be restricted by minimum number of polygons. The next filter is the area filter that allows us to select the islands that fit to the set area parameters. For example, if the maximum area is 1 and 0, then these islands will be selected. If we decrease this area, then the smaller islands will be selected. It's useful when we have a lot of small islands that we need to expand, but it takes too much time to select them. Then we turn this parameter on and decrease it as we need. You can do it manually. It's done. Now only the smallest islands are selected. So it was easy to select small islands. We have expanded them and now we can pack them. This filter is really useful. That's all. Thank you for watching.